I didn't rescue them, Forrest Daly says, his voice barely rising above the traffic. I just didn't let them die alone. I thought this was about saving 3 abandoned puppies. But when I learned what Forrest gave up that night, when I understood the choice he made in those final hours, I realized this wasn't about animal rescue at all. This was about something way bigger, way more devastating. Forrest sat there on that freezing New York sidewalk, knees pressed against cold concrete like the pavement was the only thing solid enough to hold him. Weathered flannel jacket, hollow eyes and clutched against his chest. 2 trembling puppies shaking so hard I could see it from across the street. Black and white, golden brown. And behind them, stuffed inside a torn cardboard box soaked through with melted snow. A third one barely visible beneath a ragged blanket. The photographer leaned in close, camera lowering. "He won't let them go," she whispered. "Not for food, not for shelter, not for anything." I knelt down. I didn't speak. I just watched. And that's when I saw it. The way he looked at those puppies, like they were the only thing in the world that still needed him. I didn't know it yet, but that cardboard box was about to show me something I'd never forget. Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Hit the subscribe button and ready to enjoy this story, because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now let me tell you how this started. Forrest Daly wasn't looking for puppies to save. He was looking for a warm place to sleep, maybe half a cup of coffee, maybe just one more night where the cold didn't cut so deep he couldn't breathe. But the second he heard that sound, that weak, desperate crying, he knew warmth wasn't happening tonight. The street was loud, taxis honking from every direction, tourists shouting, street vendors calling out, neon signs buzzing overhead, all of them screaming the same thing. Keep moving, don't stop, don't look. And Forrest was ready to keep moving. He really was. But then he saw the box, and everything stopped. It wasn't fancy, wasn't marked, just a torn cardboard box, wet from melted snow, sitting on the sidewalk like trash someone forgot to throw away. But it wasn't trash. Inside were 3 puppies, 1 black and white, 1 golden. One so small it was almost invisible beneath a ragged scrap of blanket. No note, no food, no explanation, just 3 tiny lives left to die. Forrest stood there staring. He didn't know what to say. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, though it was brutal, but from something else, something he hadn't felt in years. Not at the puppies, at whoever left them there, at a city that could walk past a box of dying animals and not even slow down. He looked around, hundreds of people passing by. Nobody stopped. Nobody looked. Forrest knelt down, slow. His knees cracked against the pavement. The cold bit through his jeans immediately, but he didn't move. He reached into the box. The black and white puppy flinched. The golden one whimpered. The third one didn't move at all. Forrest's hands, cracked, calloused, shaking, gently lifted the black and white puppy out. It was so light, too light. He could feel its ribs. Its heartbeat was frantic, desperate. He pulled it against his chest. Then the golden one. They were freezing. Their bodies were stiff. Their breathing was shallow, ragged. Forrest didn't think. He just acted. He unzipped his flannel jacket, the only real protection he had against the cold, and tucked both puppies inside, pressing them against his chest. The third puppy, the smallest one, stayed in the box. Too weak to move, too scared. Forrest sat down, right there on the sidewalk, back against a brick wall, box beside him, two puppies against his heart, and he whispered, "All right, I'm here." People walked past. A woman in heels nearly stepped on the box. A man in a suit glanced down, frowned, kept walking. A teenager laughed and took a photo, but didn't stop. Forrest didn't care. He wasn't doing this for them. He was doing it because no one else would. The puppies' shaking started to slow, just a little. Their breathing evened out. Their bodies pressed closer. For the first time in hours, maybe days, they were warm. And Forrest, this man who hadn't mattered to anyone in years, sat there on a freezing New York street and mattered to three small lives that had nowhere else to go. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this choice, was going to cost him everything. Forrest Daly wasn't always invisible. Once he had a life that made sense. A small apartment in Queens with heat that actually worked. A wife named Linda who laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. A job fixing elevators in the subway tunnels where nobody bothered him and the work was steady. But that was before the accident. Before the hospital bills stacked so high they blotted out the sun. Before Linda got sick and he wasn't there when she needed him most. Before the city kept moving and Forrest didn't. Now he slept near Times Square, where the noise never stopped and the cold felt like punishment. Before the puppies, Forrest's days followed a rhythm most people would never notice. Wake up when someone kicked his blanket or a cop told him to move along. Find a bathroom that would let him in. Count the coins in his pocket, sometimes enough for coffee, usually not. Sit, watch, wait for night to come again. The crowds were the worst part. Thousands of people passed him every day. Tourists with cameras, businessmen in sharp suits, families holding hands. And every single one of them looked right through him like he was fog. Some stepped around him, some crossed the street early, some clutched their purses tighter. Nobody made eye contact. Forrest had learned not to expect it. Eye contact meant acknowledgement. Acknowledgement meant discomfort, and discomfort meant anger. It was easier for everyone if he just didn't exist. But sometimes, late at night, when the crowds thinned and the cold pressed in, Forrest would remember what it felt like to be seen. Linda used to see him. She'd look at him over her morning coffee, messy hair and sleepy eyes, and smile like he was the only person in the world worth waking up for. She'd laugh at his stories about the strange sounds elevators made, the ones nobody else heard. She'd press her hand against his cheek and say, "You notice things, Forrest. That's your gift." He'd give anything to hear her voice again. Just once, the night she died, Forrest was underground fixing a stalled elevator in the financial district. His phone rang 4 times. He didn't hear it over the machinery. By the time he saw the missed calls, she was already gone. The hospital said it was sudden. An aneurysm. Nothing anyone could have done. But Forrest knew better. He should have been there. He should have noticed. That first night with the puppies, the temperature dropped fast. Forrest could feel it in his bones. The wind picked up, cutting through the streets like knives. Steam rose from the subway vents. But it didn't help. The cold always won. The puppies were still trembling inside his jacket. Not as bad as before, but enough that Forrest knew they wouldn't make it through the night without more warmth. He looked down at them. 2 tiny faces pressed against his chest. The third one finally crawled out of the box, weak but moving, and curled up against his leg. Forrest didn't hesitate. He slipped his arms out of his flannel jacket, careful not to jostle the puppies, and wrapped it around all 3 of them like a blanket. He tucked the edges tight, made sure their heads were covered, made sure they couldn't fall out. The cold hit him immediately. His thin undershirt did nothing. The wind tore through it like it wasn't even there. His arms went numb first. Then his chest, then his hands. But the puppies stopped shaking. Their breathing slowed, deepened. One of them, the golden one, let out a tiny sigh and pressed closer. Forrest leaned his head back against the brick wall. His teeth started to chatter. His whole body tensed, trying to generate heat that wasn't there. He coughed, once, then again, harder. His chest burned. The cold was getting worse. He could feel it settling into his lungs, heavy and sharp. But the puppies were warm, and that was all that mattered. Forrest closed his eyes. He tried to remember Linda's laugh, the way she'd hum while doing dishes, the way she'd curl up against him on cold nights and say, "We're warmer together." He wished she could see him now. Maybe she'd be proud. Maybe she'd tell him he was finally paying attention to the right things. The city roared around him. Taxis honked. People shouted. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. But for the first time in years, Forrest Daly wasn't invisible. 3 small lives depended on him, and he wasn't going to let them down. Not this time. Morning came with strangers and cameras. Forrest woke to the sound of a shutter clicking. His eyes opened slow, vision blurry. The puppies were still pressed against his chest, warm and breathing. His body ached everywhere. His fingers wouldn't bend right, but they were alive. A woman stood 3 feet away, camera raised, lens pointed directly at him. Forrest blinked. "What are you?" "Don't move," she said softly. "Please, just stay like that." Click, click, click. She lowered the camera. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, worn jacket covered in pins and patches. Her eyes weren't the kind that looked through him. They looked at him, really looked. "I'm Robin," she said. "Robin Quinn. I'm a street photographer." Forrest didn't respond. He pulled the jacket tighter around the puppies. Robin crouched down, not too close. "How long have you had them?" "Since last night." "They were abandoned?" Forrest nodded. Robin's jaw tightened. She looked at the box, still sitting beside him, torn and soaked through. Then back at Forrest. "You gave them your coat." It wasn't a question. "They needed it more," Forrest said quietly. Robin stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood up, checked the screen on her camera, and walked away without another word. Forrest thought that was the end of it. He was wrong. By afternoon, people started stopping. Not everyone, but enough. Some points, some whispered. A few took photos with their phones. Forrest didn't understand why until a man in a business suit paused, looked at him and said, "You're the guy from the photo." "What photo?" The man held up his phone. The screen showed Forrest, knees on concrete, 2 puppies against his chest, coat wrapped around them, face exhausted but determined. The 3rd puppy was barely visible in the box beside him. The caption read, "This homeless man gave up his only coat to save 3 abandoned puppies in freezing temperatures. While thousands walked past, he stayed." It had been shared 47,000 times. Forrest's stomach twisted. That's me." The man nodded, smiled awkwardly, and walked away. By evening, the reactions changed. A woman in yoga pants stopped, stared, and pulled out her phone. She didn't smile. She dialed. Forrest heard her voice, sharp and certain. "Yes, I'd like to report someone. There's a homeless man on the corner of 45th and 7th, and he has animals, dogs, puppies. He's keeping them on the street, in the cold. It's not safe." She hung up, looked at Forrest. "You can't keep them out here. It's cruel. Forrest opened his mouth to respond, but she was already gone. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers, one older, one younger. The older one sighed when he saw Forrest like this was the last thing he wanted to deal with. "Sir," the officer said, "we got a complaint about the dogs." Forrest looked down. The puppies were awake now, eyes wide, watching the uniforms with fear. "I'm not hurting them," Forrest said quietly. "I didn't say you were." The officer glanced at his partner. "But you can't keep animals on the street. It's against city ordinances. Animal control's on the way." Forrest's hands tightened around the jacket. "Animal control. They'll take them somewhere safe, a shelter, get them checked out. And then what?" The officer hesitated. "Then they'll be put up for adoption. And if nobody adopts them?" Silence. The younger officer looked away. Forrest's voice stayed calm, steady. "Can they keep them alive?" The older officer's face softened. "Look, I don't make the rule." "Can they keep them alive?" Forrest repeated. No one answered. A van pulled up, white with city logos on the side. A woman in a uniform stepped out, clipboard in hand, her expression already tired. "These animals?" she asked. The officer nodded. She approached Forrest, knelt down, and looked at the puppies. "They seem healthy enough. We'll take them in, get them checked, see what we can do." Forrest didn't move. "What happens if you can't find homes?" The woman's eyes flicked up. She didn't say anything, but Forrest saw the answer there. He pulled the puppies closer. "No," he said quietly. "They stay with me. Sir, they stay with me." The crowd that had gathered, 15, maybe 20 people, phones out, recording, went silent. The animal control officer stood up. "I can't force you to surrender them, but if we get more complaints, we'll have to come back. And next time, it won't be a conversation." She walked back to the van. The officers followed. As they drove away, Forrest looked down at the puppies. 3 pairs of eyes staring up at him, trusting, helpless. Robin Quinn stepped out of the crowd, camera around her neck. "You just made yourself visible," she said quietly. "That's not always a good thing." Forrest didn't respond. He just held the puppies tighter. For better or worse, the city finally saw him. The puppies started following Forrest on the 3rd day. At first, they stayed in the box. Too weak to move far, too scared of the noise and the crowds. But as their strength returned, as their bellies filled with scraps Forrest shared from his own meager meals, they began to venture out. The black and white one first, bold, curious. Then the golden one, cautious but loyal. The smallest one, dark fur, white paws, took the longest, but eventually crawled out and pressed close to Forrest's leg wherever he went. He didn't have leashes. I didn't need them. They just followed. When Forrest walked to find water, they walked behind him in a line. When he sat, they curled around his feet. When he slept, they pressed against his chest, breathing in rhythm with him like they'd always been there. And the city noticed. The change was subtle at first. A woman in a red coat smiled as she passed, then stopped and placed a $5 bill in Forrest's hand. "For them," she said, nodding at the puppies. A businessman paused during his morning commute, watched the puppies play with a crushed paper cup, and dropped a handful of coins into the box without saying a word. A teenager with headphones took them off, knelt down, and let the golden puppy lick her fingers. When she stood up, there were tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on them." Forrest didn't know what to say. He just nodded. People who used to cross the street now stopped to look. Some took photos. Some asked questions. A few left food, crackers, half-eaten sandwiches, once even an unopened bag of dog treats. The puppies became visible, and so did Forrest. But it wasn't just curiosity. It was something else, something Forrest hadn't felt in years: connection. People looked at him like he mattered, like what he was doing meant something. It scared him more than being invisible ever did. Brenda Brennan owned the small cafe on the corner of 44th Street. Forrest had walked past it 1,000 times, never went in, never thought he could. But one morning, as he sat nearby with the puppies, the door opened and Brenda stepped out. Late 50s, graying hair, apron stained with coffee and flour. She didn't say anything, just placed a paper bag on the ground next to him and walked back inside. Forrest opened it carefully. 2 breakfast sandwiches, still warm, a container of scrambled eggs, 3 strips of bacon. He looked up at the cafe window. Brenda was watching from behind the counter. When their eyes met, she gave the smallest nod and turned away. The next morning she did it again, and the morning after that. She never asked for anything, never made a show of it, just left the bag and disappeared. On the 4th morning, Forrest finally spoke. "Thank you," he said quietly as she set the bag down. Brenda paused. Her voice was soft, almost sad. "My son used to have a dog. Before She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Harvey Fisher appeared on the 6th night. Older man, 70 maybe, worn jacket and a leather bag slung over his shoulder. He approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "Mind if I take a look at them?" he asked, gesturing to the puppies. Forrest tensed. "Who are you?" "Retired vet. Saw the photo. I wanted to make sure they were okay." Forrest didn't move. Harvey sighed. "I'm not here to take them. I just want to help." Something in his voice made Forrest believe him. Harvey knelt down, gentle and practiced. He examined each puppy carefully, eyes, ears, teeth, paws, felt their ribs, listened to their breathing. The puppies squirmed but didn't fight. When he finished, Harvey sat back on his heels. "They're stronger than I expected," he said. "You've done good by them." Forrest exhaled. "They're going to be okay." Harvey's face darkened. "For now, but winter's coming, Forrest. Real winter. The kind that doesn't care how hard you try. I'll keep them warm. You're already giving them everything you have." Harvey's voice was quiet, firm. "But it won't be enough. They won't last long out here. And honestly, neither will you." The words hung in the cold air between them. Forrest looked down at the puppies. The golden one was asleep, head resting on his knee. The black and white one chewed on the corner of the cardboard box. The smallest one watched Harvey with wide, trusting eyes. "What am I supposed to do?" Forrest asked. Harvey stood up slowly, his knees cracking. "I don't know, but you need to figure it out soon." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small bottle. "Vitamin supplement. Mix a few drops in their water. It'll help." He placed it in Forrest's hand and walked away. That night, Forrest lay awake. The puppies pressed against his chest. He could feel his body failing. The cough was worse. His hands shook even when they shouldn't. The cold cuts deeper every day. Harvey was right. He couldn't save them forever. But maybe he could save them long enough. Robin Quinn found Forrest on the 8th day. He was sitting in his usual spot, back against the brick wall. Puppies sprawled around him in the weak afternoon sun. The black and white one was chewing on a shoelace. The golden one slept. The smallest one watched passers-by with cautious eyes. Robin sat down beside him without asking. She'd done that a few times now. Just sat. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. Today she looked like she had something to say. "I've been making calls," she said finally. Forrest glanced at her. "Calls? About the puppies. There's a shelter in Brooklyn. No kill. They specialize in rescues. I talked to the director. She said they'd take them." Forrest's chest tightened. "They'd get medical care," Robin continued. "Real food, warm beds, and they'd find them homes. Good homes. Together. If possible." She pulled out her phone, showed him photos. Clean kennels, smiling staff, dogs playing in a yard. It looked safe. It looked like everything Forrest couldn't give them. "They could be there by tonight," Robin said softly. "I'd drive them myself." Forrest stared at the photos. His throat felt thick. The puppies deserved that. Deserved warmth and safety and a future that didn't depend on a dying man's willpower. He opened his mouth to say yes. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." Robin's face lit up. "Really?" Forrest nodded, not trusting his voice. "I'll call them right now." Robin stood up, phone already in her ear. She walked a few steps away, voice bright and hopeful. Forrest looked down at the puppies. The golden one had woken up, yawning. It looked at him with eyes that didn't understand what was about to happen. He reached down and scratched behind its ears. "They'll be safe," he told himself. "That's what matters." Robin's voice drifted over. "Yes, 3 puppies, 8, maybe 9 weeks old. Healthy, well-behaved. The owner is willing to surrender." Forrest heard her pause. Then her voice dropped, quieter but still audible. "What do you mean space is limited? You said—" "No, I understand, but—" Another pause. Longer this time. "Wait, what happens if you can't place all 3? Forrest's hands stopped moving. The puppy nudged his palm, confused. Robin's voice turned sharp. "Euthanasia? You told me this was a no-kill shelter." "It is." A woman's voice crackled through the phone, tinny but clear enough. "But we're at capacity. We can guarantee placement for 2. Maybe. The 3rd one, the smallest. If we can't find a foster within 72 hours, we have to make space. I'm sorry, it's policy." Forrest's vision tunneled. Euthanasia. 72 hours. The smallest one. His hands started shaking. Robin was still talking, voice rising. "There has to be another option. Another shelter. Something." Forrest reached for the cardboard box. His fingers fumbled, clumsy with cold and fear. He pulled it toward himself, the puppies startling at the sudden movement. "Forrest!" Robin turned around, phone still at her ear. "What are you—" "No," he said quietly. "What?" "No." Louder this time. "They stay with me." Robin lowered the phone. "Forrest, you heard what she said. 2 of them are guaranteed, and the 3rd one dies." "Maybe not. They'll try. Maybe." Forrest's voice cracked. "Maybe isn't good enough." Robin stepped closer, her expression pained. "You can't keep them alive out here. Harvey said it himself. Winter's coming. You're already—" She stopped herself. "I'm already what?" Forrest looked up at her, eyes red-rimmed. "Dying? You think I don't know that?" The puppies pressed against his legs, sensing the tension. "I know I can't save them forever," Forrest said, quieter now. "I know that, but I can save them today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. And when I can't anymore, at least they won't die alone. At least they won't die wondering why nobody wanted them." His hands were still shaking. He pressed them against the box to steady them. "The smallest one," he whispered. "She's the one they'd kill first, because she's scared. Because she's not as strong as the others. Because nobody wants the broken ones. Robin's eyes filled with tears. I was the broken one once, Forrest said. And nobody wanted me either. He pulled all three puppies close. They climbed over each other, licking his face, his hands oblivious to the choice he'd just made. They stay with me, Forrest repeated. Robin wiped her eyes. She ended the call without another word. Even if it kills you? She asked. Forrest looked at the smallest puppy. She'd finally fallen asleep, tucked against his chest, breathing slow and peaceful. Especially then, he said. That night, Forrest couldn't sleep. He kept running the numbers in his head. How many days he had left. How much cold his body could take. How long before the cough in his chest turned into something he couldn't fight. The puppies slept soundly, curled together, warm beneath his coat. Death with me, Forrest thought, or death alone. It wasn't really a choice at all. The storm came without warning. Forrest had seen the sky darken that afternoon, clouds rolling in thick and low. But winter storms in New York were common. He thought he had time, thought he could find better shelter before it hit. He was wrong. By evening, the first flakes started falling. Light at first, almost pretty. The puppies snapped at them, playful, curious. Within an hour, the snow turned vicious. Wind tore through the streets like something alive and angry. It howled between buildings, knocked over trash cans, sent newspapers spinning into the air. The temperature dropped so fast Forrest could feel it in his teeth. The snow fell heavy and thick, blinding. It piled up on sidewalks, on awnings, on Forrest's shoulders. He pulled the puppies closer. We need to move, he muttered, voice lost in the wind. He tried, he really did. But every shelter, every doorway, every warm spot he knew was already taken. Other people had gotten there first. They turned him away with hard eyes and harder words. No room. Keep moving. Not with those animals. Forrest stumbled through the streets, puppies tucked inside his coat, the box abandoned blocks ago. The wind cut through his thin undershirt like razors. His hands were numb. His feet dragged. The smallest puppy whimpered. I know, Forrest whispered. I know. He found an awning. Small, barely enough coverage. But it was something. He pressed himself into the corner, back against the wall, and curled his body around the puppies. The wind didn't stop. Snow blew sideways under the awning, soaking through his clothes. Ice formed on the concrete. The cold was absolute, merciless. Forrest unzipped his coat completely, pulled all three puppies against his bare chest, wrapped the coat around them like a cocoon, and held it closed with shaking hands. The cold hit him like a fist. His whole body seized up. His muscles clenched so tight it hurt. His breath came in short, sharp gasps that burned his lungs. The puppies burrowed deeper, instinctively seeking warmth. The golden one whimpered again, louder this time, scared. Forrest's lips were already turning blue, but he forced them to move. He started humming, soft, broken, barely audible over the storm. It was Linda's lullaby, the one she used to sing when the world felt too heavy. He couldn't remember all the words anymore, but the melody was still there, buried deep in his memory. Hush now, don't you cry. The golden puppy pressed its face against his chest. The black and white one stopped squirming. The smallest one, always the smallest one, tucked herself under his chin. Forrest kept humming. His hands stopped shaking first. He didn't notice at first, too focused on keeping the melody going, on keeping the puppies calm. But then he tried to adjust his grip on the coat, and his fingers wouldn't respond. They were stiff, heavy, like they belonged to someone else. His arms went next. The trembling that had racked his body for hours just stopped. A strange warmth spread through his chest. Not real warmth. He knew that, but his body believed it anyway. It felt like relief. The puppies were still shaking, but less now. Their breathing slowed. Their bodies relaxed. They were warm. Forrest's humming grew quieter. The storm raged around them. Snow piled up against the wall. Wind screamed. The city disappeared into white static. But inside the coat, pressed against Forrest's chest, 3 small hearts kept beating. "Don't you cry." Forrest's eyes grew heavy. He tried to keep them open. I tried to stay alert. But the exhaustion was so deep, so complete. "Just for a minute," he told himself. "Just rest for a minute." The smallest puppy sighed against his neck. Warm breath, trusting. Forrest stopped humming. His chest rose, fell, rose slower, fell. The puppies didn't notice. They were asleep now, finally warm enough to rest, finally safe enough to let go. Forrest's head tilted back against the wall, his eyes closed. The storm continued. Snow fell. Wind howled, but Forrest didn't move. His body stayed curled around the puppies, a shield even in stillness. His coat held firm. His arms, frozen in place, kept them wrapped tight. The shaking had stopped. Not because he was warm, because there was nothing left to shake. Hours passed. The puppies slept on, breathing steady, bodies pressed together, unaware that the heartbeat beneath them had gone silent. Morning would come eventually, but Forrest Daly wouldn't see it. He'd made his choice, and in the end, he'd kept his promise. They were warm. They weren't alone. And neither was he. Morning came slowly, gray and cold. The storm had passed sometime in the night, leaving the city buried under 6 inches of fresh snow. The streets were quiet in that strange way they only got after a blizzard, muffled, subdued, like the world was holding its breath. The first person to find them was a woman on her way to work. She almost walked past. I almost didn't look, but something about the shape under the awning, the stillness of it, made her stop. She took 3 steps closer. Then she saw the puppies, 3 of them, nestled against a man's chest, his coat wrapped around them. They were awake, moving slightly, but the man wasn't. The woman stepped closer still. "Sir, are you—" She saw his face, blue-tinged lips, eyes closed, skin the color of snow. The scream tore out of her throat before she could stop it. "Oh my God! Somebody help! Please!" People came running. A man in a business suit, a jogger, a delivery driver who abandoned his truck in the middle of the street. "Call 911, someone shouted. "Is he breathing? I don't think—" The puppies, startled by the noise, began to whimper. They pressed tighter against Forrest's chest, confused, scared. The businessman knelt down, careful not to touch. "Jesus, he's frozen." "Are those dogs? He's not moving. He's not—" "Did you call? Did someone call?" In the distance, sirens started wailing. The ambulance arrived within minutes. 2 paramedics pushed through the growing crowd. A woman with short hair and a man with a thick beard. They moved fast, professional, but their faces tightened when they saw Forrest. "Sir, can you hear me?" the woman asked, knowing there would be no answer. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck, held them there, waited. Her partner was already pulling equipment from the bag. "Anything?" She shook her head. The bearded paramedic looked at the puppies. They were still pressed against Forrest's chest, trying to burrow deeper, still seeking the warmth that was no longer there. "We need to move them," he said quietly. "I know." The woman reached for the first puppy, the golden one. It whimpered louder now, clinging to Forrest's coat with tiny paws. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." She pulled gently. The puppy resisted, crying, twisting in her grip. She handed it to a bystander, a young man who held it awkwardly, tears already streaming down his face. The black and white puppy came next. It fought harder, yelping, trying to scramble back. The smallest one was last. She was tucked under Forrest's chin, barely visible. When the paramedic tried to lift her, she made a sound, high-pitched, desperate, heartbreaking, the sound of something being ripped away from the only safety it had ever known. "It's okay," the paramedic said, voice cracking. "It's okay, baby." But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. With the puppies removed, the paramedics began their work. Chest compressions, breathing tube, monitors that beeped flatly, mechanically, without hope. The crowd had grown to 30, maybe 40 people. Some recorded on phones, some cried, some just stood there, frozen. Robin Quinn pushed through them, camera forgotten around her neck. "Forrest?" Her voice was small, broken. "No, no, no, no." She dropped to her knees beside the paramedics. "Is he?" The woman paramedic looked up, her eyes filled with an answer Robin didn't want. "We're doing everything we can." But they both knew it was already over. The bearded paramedic stopped compressions. I looked at his watch. His voice was flat, detached, the only way to get through it. Time of death, 7:43 a.m. Robin's hands flew to her mouth. A sob escaped, raw and ugly. Someone in the crowd turned away. Another person said a prayer. A woman sat down on the curb and put her head in her hands. The paramedics covered Forrest with a white sheet. Robin stared at the shape beneath it, at the coat still wrapped around nothing now, soaked through with melted snow and something darker. She'd taken his photo 11 days ago. She'd told his story. She'd watched people share it, cry over it, call him a hero. And now he was gone. Harvey Fisher appeared from somewhere in the crowd. He knelt beside the puppies, now huddled together on the cold sidewalk, shaking despite the coats people had draped over them. He examined them quickly, listened to their hearts, checked their paws. "They're alive," he said, voice thick. He kept them alive. Brenda Brennan stood nearby, apron still on from opening her cafe. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What happens to them now?" someone asked. Harvey looked up. His face was hard, determined. "They don't go to a shelter. Not after this." "Then where?" "I'll take them," Harvey said, "until we figure something out." Robin nodded numbly. "I'll help. We'll find them a home. Together." The ambulance doors closed. The vehicle pulled away slowly, respectfully. The crowd began to disperse, but Robin stayed. She knelt where Forrest had been, in the melted snow, and picked up his coat. It was heavy, torn, frozen in places, and in the pocket she felt something. Paper, folded, waiting. Robin didn't read the letter right away. She couldn't. Not there. Not with people still lingering, phones out, whispering about the homeless man who died saving dogs. She folded the paper carefully and put it back in the coat pocket, held the coat against her chest like it was something sacred. Harvey took the puppies to his apartment. Brenda followed with blankets and food. Robin went to the hospital. She needed to know if there was anything at all, that could have saved him. The emergency room was chaotic. Nurses rushing, machines beeping, the smell of antiseptic and desperation. Robin found the attending physician in a hallway, exhausted, wiping his hands on his scrubs. "The man from this morning," she said. "Forrest Daly. I need to know, are you family?" "No, but I—" Her voice broke. "I knew him. I need to know if he could have been saved." The doctor's face softened. He glanced around, then gestured to a quieter corner. "Hypothermia," he said quietly. "Severe. His core temperature was too low. Even if we'd gotten to him an hour earlier, his chances were—" He stopped. "I'm sorry." Robin nodded, swallowing hard. "Did anyone else come asking about him before this morning?" The doctor frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did he ever come here? For help? For anything?" The doctor pulled out a tablet, scrolled through records. His expression changed. "There's a note here from the Outreach Center on 42nd, dated 11 days ago." Robin's stomach dropped. "What does it say?" "They offered him emergency shelter placement, 1 bed available. He was pre-approved." The doctor looked up. "He never showed up." "When?" Robin's voice was barely a whisper. The doctor checked. "The night before the blizzard. They held the bed for him until midnight." The world tilted. Robin's knees almost gave out. She pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. "Did it say why he didn't come?" The doctor scrolled further. The intake coordinator made a note. Said he asked if he could bring animals. They told him no. Shelter policy. No pets. He looked at Robin. The coordinator wrote that he thanked them and walked away. Robin sat in Harvey's living room that night, surrounded by people who'd loved Forrest without ever really knowing him. Harvey, Brenda, a handful of others who'd stopped to help over the past 11 days. The puppies were asleep in a pile on a soft blanket, finally warm, finally safe. The smallest one twitched in her sleep, tiny paws moving like she was running. Robin told them what she'd learned. The room went silent. Brenda covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Harvey stared at the floor, jaw tight. "He had a way out," Robin said, voice hollow. "He could have survived, but he chose them instead." "He chose them," Harvey repeated, like he couldn't quite believe it. Brenda's voice cracked. "I would have taken them. If I'd known, I would have." "He didn't ask," Robin said. "He never asked anyone for anything." Harvey stood up, walked to the window. His reflection in the glass looked old, broken. "He gave them everything," Harvey said quietly, "and we gave him nothing." "That's not true," Robin said. "You checked on them. Brenda fed them. People stopped. People cared." "But not enough," Harvey said. "Not enough to save him." 3 weeks later, the puppies had transformed. Healthy, playful. Their coats are shiny. Their eyes are bright. Harvey had cared for them like they were his own, but he knew they needed more than he could give. Robin's photo had gone viral again. Millions of shares this time. News outlets picked up the story. Donations poured into animal shelters across the city in Forrest's name. And families came forward asking to adopt. Not just any families. Families who understood what these puppies represented. Families who promised to keep them together. The adoption event was held at Brenda's cafe. She closed it for the day, transformed it into something warm and welcoming. 30 people showed up. Some brought flowers, some brought donations. All of them had been moved by Forrest's story. The family who was chosen, a couple in their 40s, 2 kids, a house in Queens with a yard, knelt down to meet the puppies. The golden one licked the woman's face. The black and white one climbed into the boy's lap. The smallest one, cautious as always, watched from a distance until the little girl sat down and waited, patient and still. Eventually, the smallest puppy walked over and pressed against her. "We'll take care of them," the father said, looking at Harvey. "I promise." Harvey nodded, not trusting his voice. Robin stepped forward, holding something wrapped in cloth. Forrest's coat. She'd cleaned it, repaired the tears as best she could, and she'd left the pocket intact. "This was his," she said. "He used it to keep them warm." I thought you should have it." The mother took it carefully, reverently. "Thank you." "There's something in the pocket," Robin said quietly. "A letter. I think you should read it." The woman reached in and pulled out the folded paper. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter was written in shaky handwriting, the ink smudged in places from melted snow. The woman read it aloud, her voice breaking with every line. "If you're reading this, then I did the right thing. My name is Forrest Daly. I used to have a life that made sense. A wife named Linda, an apartment in Queens, a job fixing things underground where nobody looked at me anyway. I lost her 3 years ago. Aneurysm. The hospital called 4 times. I didn't hear the phone. By the time I saw the missed calls, she was already gone. I wasn't there when she needed me most. That's the thing I can't fix. The elevator I can't repair. The call I can't answer. I've been invisible ever since, and maybe I deserve to be. But then I found them. 3 puppies in a cardboard box, left to die on a street where thousands of people walk every day and nobody stops. They needed me. For the first time in 3 years, something needed me. I was offered shelter the night before the storm. 1 bed, warm, safe, a chance to survive the winter. But they wouldn't take the puppies. I thought about it. I really did. I thought about leaving them at the shelter, letting someone else decide their fate. But I heard the word euthanasia. And I knew what that meant. The smallest one would go first. Because she's scared. Because she's not as strong. Because nobody wants the broken ones. I was a broken one once, and Linda never walked away from me, so I didn't walk away from them. I know you'll think I should have chosen differently, that my life mattered more than 3 dogs. Maybe you're right, but I don't think Linda would agree. She used to say that love isn't about what's easy, it's about what's right when nobody's watching. Nobody was watching that night in the storm, just me and them. And I made my choice. Please don't cry for me. Don't make me into something I'm not. I wasn't a hero. I was just a man who'd lost everything and found something worth keeping alive. They were warm. They weren't alone. And for the first time in a long time, neither was I. Take care of them, please. Keep them together if you can. They've already lost too much. Tell them I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer, but tell them I'm glad I stayed long enough. The cafe was silent except for the sound of crying. The mother folded the letter carefully, her hands trembling. Tears streamed down her face. The father wrapped his arm around her shoulders, his own eyes red. The children knelt beside the puppies, holding them close. Robin couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. She looked at Harvey, who'd turned away, shoulders shaking. Brenda pressed a napkin to her face, mascara running. "He knew," the mother whispered. "He knew he was going to die." "And he did it anyway," Harvey said, voice rough. The woman looked down at the puppies. All 3 were awake now, sensing the emotion in the room. The golden one climbed into her lap. The black and white one pressed against her son. The smallest one, always the smallest one, walked to the little girl and sat down beside her, waiting. "We'll keep them together," the mother said. "Always, I promise." 6 months later, Robin received a photo. It showed all 3 puppies, bigger now, healthy, happy, sleeping in a pile on a bed, pressed together just like they used to press against Forrest's chest. The message read, "They still sleep like this every night, like they're remembering something, someone." Robin stared at the photo for a long time. She thought about the first time she'd seen Forrest, the way he'd sat on that freezing sidewalk, holding two puppies against his chest while a third hid in a torn cardboard box. The way people had walked past without stopping, the way the world only noticed after it was too late. She opened her laptop and began to write, not for clicks, not for shares, but because some stories need to be told, even when they hurt, especially when they hurt. In Queens, in a house with a yard and a family that loved them, 3 dogs slept pressed together on a warm bed. Outside, snow began to fall. The smallest one stirred, pressed closer to her siblings, and settled back into sleep. Somewhere in the city, invisible people huddled in doorways, fighting to survive another night. And somewhere beyond all of that, in a place where the cold couldn't reach, Forrest Daly rested. He'd made his choice. He'd given everything when he had nothing left. And in the end, that was enough. Some people save lives quietly, without asking for recognition, without expecting reward. They do it because love doesn't ask if it will survive. It only asks if it is needed. And when the world finally notices, when the cameras arrive and the tears flow, and the stories spread, it's already too late to thank them. But maybe that was never the point. Maybe the point was always this. In the last moments, in the cold and the dark, and the impossible choice between survival and sacrifice, Forrest Daly looked at 3 small lives that needed him, and he whispered, "All right, I'm here." They were warm, they weren't alone, and neither was he.